Good morning, ladies and gents. Let me just kill the music for me. I know you guys couldn't hear it at that point, but whatever. You may notice I've already got one, big bar at the bottom side of this UI. I'm just playing with getting some images in the right place, making them look something like a background, because otherwise it looks a little sloppy. And that's really, not what we want. Not what we want at all. So, I'm actually going so far. Can't help but know. Oh, here's my rotation. Nope, wrong one. Also wrong. There we go. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to set this sucker up such that we can do a few things. One, it lets me make the background look a little nicer without looking like complete trash, right? That's part one. The other thing it lets us do is it hides the skybox, so it's not obvious what we're doing. It suddenly becomes this nice background that the UI sits upon, and it's not like this weird out-of-place setup. So that's kind of the goal of this little bit here. But as the task text actually says, I would like to work on my spell pages today, specifically for those who want to be able to cast spells out of combat. I assume that's kind of an appreciated ability, and it's just one of those things that I kind of want to get done and make sure works. Let's see. I'm just going to take a quick peek at what this... So here's the texture in its entirety. Oops. Okay. Whatever. Don't care. And it's just a bunch of bands of metal. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to adjust the texture coordinates such that the upper left-hand corner is like one of these bands. Just one. I don't want a bunch of bands. I just kind of want the single metal-looking band, and then I kind of want to be done with it. Yeah, I have some ideas of ways to do this better, but for now, I think because I'm in a bit of a rush and want to get to my spells page, I'm going to just quickly see if I can't, get this to play nice. It may or may not work so well this first time, but we'll see. Specifically because I'm stretching these things. Whenever you take one of these textures and move it in such a way that it is no longer the same aspect ratio as it is in the texture, it gets stretched in a direction. You'll note that this one down here actually exhibits some signs of stretching. And I'm actually kind of tempted to play with it more to get it to fit better. Specifically, actually, if we took this one and we shortened it slightly, not a ton, but slightly, note how much better that texture looks. So what if I took this other image, unrotated it, put it here and here, trying to make sure that this thing lines up with everything that I can make it line up with. There we go. And now that we've got it matching like this, we just have to fix this this other UV here. Gosh darn it. Okay, 0.2? No. Okay. We need to shorten this in terms of width. Close. Hi, dog. That actually looks a lot better. Having something like this is a decent match. I just got dog bombed. She dropped him off and then just took off. That's fine. That actually looks a lot better. Right? The texture on the bottom one doesn't look quite so stretched, and the upper one... That's weird. And the upper one doesn't look like it's out of place either. Both of them look fairly well constrained and kind of under control. I'm kind of curious what it looks like with the combat. There it is. That doesn't look bad. We could do a little better with it maybe, but it doesn't look bad. I like it. At least as a starting point. I'll play with the rest later. I'll just name them appropriately so I can figure out which is which. And I'll turn off caps lock so everything I type isn't in caps. Let's see. It's not really the bottom, but it's the bottom decoration. And then we have the actual bottom filler. Still, that doesn't look bad. I like. I might even be able to go so far, depending on which texture that is, if I open this up again and see that, okay, no, the one above it is another blank line, and I like having one of the studded lines above it. The studded lines kind of make it feel like it's fixed in place there. Alright, so, on to the actual task of the day. Actual task of the day is to kind of talk about the industry as a whole, and to start working on my UI spells page. So I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth. So I'm going to bounce back, I'm going to bounce back and forth between those topics. Specifically, I guess when I talk about the industry, I'm going to talk about the state of it as seen from somebody who just did a bunch of interviewing. I just finished a bunch of phone screens with potential applicants for the company, and it's definitely interesting to see where the focus has shifted over the years. So when I talk about things like what I find important in game design, or what I find important in a programmer, that's obviously going to be somewhat different from what we found as important as a programmer years ago when punch cards were a thing. Obviously nobody really, or not many people, write in where's my character window? There it is. Not many people write in something like assembly anymore. It's just, it doesn't happen a ton. The closest you tend to get is somebody like a compiler engineer who does that kind of thing, and even then it's kind of iffy. It just doesn't happen often, is really the case. So it's kind of funny that I tend to ask, at least personally, I ask a lot about things like standard C code when I do my interviews. It's an interesting back and forth for me, because when I talk about things like C and pointers and memory management, that's not actually something that you do a lot. Like you guys have never seen me do memory management within Unity because it's C# based. So there's none of that. It just doesn't exist. I'm trying to think of how I want to format the spell page, which is why I'm kind of stalling here for a moment and just kind of talking at the camera. It's difficult. I want to come up with some easy format so I can just like see a list of spells and either click on them and then click cast, or I don't know, something like that. I also probably will need a target page because of this stuff. Does a character window have a script? No. It looks like right now I'm handling most everything without major scripts on the topmost objects, which is impressive. It's actually really impressive. I'm just gonna make a new page. So yeah, it's interesting how what I grade on versus what other people grade on. Especially when I do things like, go to Google and talk there with a bunch of their engineers about, oh yeah, well, I like to, when I interview with them, I like to talk a lot, and it's an interesting thing, because I actually think I talk a little too much with folks at times. I'm noticing that the skull disappears because obviously I attached it to a single page. And I might want to make copies of it just so that it lands on each of these titles. Just a thought. But for example, when I went to Google, it was a lot of kind of big data style questions, and it was really interesting to kind of get asked those style questions. Lots of big O notation, lots of things where they care about stuff like how, what the worst runtime of data can be, mostly because they handle so much data that it matters for them. Versus you kind of have to keep in mind when you're interviewing, well, here's what we're looking for. We don't want to, potentially scare off anybody who's interested in the job by asking them questions about something that's not really related. Because then they'll suddenly think, oh no, if this is what I'm going to be doing, maybe I'm not so interested in the job. So the fact that I'm asking C-style questions, I kind of realized came as a detriment to some degree, because people kept thinking, yeah, I know this is a games job, and I know it said Unity, but for some reason he keeps asking me C questions specifically. And they weren't too C-oriented, but they were enough that it was causing some alarm, because I had multiple applicants actually ask, what is you guys do write in C, correct? Like, you don't you don't just write in other languages. So it was really interesting to see that pop up. I'm trying to see if I can reuse this combat item UI. I'd be really happy if I could. I don't think I'm going to be able to get away with it because it has this combat UI attached to it. Oh wait, item UI. No, never mind. My bad. There we go. We have combat spell UI, but that also has this combat UI attachment to it, so maybe not. I might need just a different prefab just so I can control it a little better. I'll base it off of the combat spell UI, but I don't think I want to go so far as to actually like reinvent this. Remember, we're trying to keep the amount of copied and pasted code to a minimum. So that's kind of part of why I really don't want to fight with some of this, is because it would just end up being copied code. So if I could reuse this like spell UI, I'd think that'd be great. As it turns out, because I don't think I can, maybe not so great. Here's our scroll view, and when we attach one of these to the content, you'll note how it works kind of exactly as we expect it to. Pop. Cool. This is not a combat spell UI, this is just standard spell UI. And I really need to come up with some way to differentiate the two, because otherwise that's going to get painful later. Let's delete this, put the spell UI back in place so that we know we're editing the right one. Excuse me. Let's see here. So just to kind of recall, we use the raw image as the background. I'm going to go so far as to remove the combat spell UI from this thing, because that is an overkill move. But we'll need something very similar, unfortunately, attached to it. And we might even find a way to mesh the two without causing too much trouble. If we can kind of take a step back and generalize it, that might be the best way to handle this, honestly. We'll just call this one spell UI. So yeah, that's kind of what I ran into a lot, especially like, as Junkie Twitch actually just said, web design versus game design has its huge differences, and that's kind of true. You know, I don't want to be testing HTML and JavaScript if we're going to be writing in C#. That said, it's interesting that you also want to make sure that you find a programmer whose breadth and depth are full, so that they have a full enough understanding that if you switch languages to something like Python and start talking about Python, they may not understand the specifics of Python, but they'll understand kind of the common syntax and some of the easier to use bits and pieces, such that they don't get completely lost when you change languages or change types. And that's where I think a lot of programmers are kind of falling short, is that common syntax. It seemed like a lot of folks had enjoyed specializing in something, and then by the time you get to the excuse me, by the time you get to something like an interview where they say, okay, we want to see you do this, and you've specialized so much that you actually don't know how to you don't know how to do that within the confines of a different language, not because you don't understand the other language, but because you don't really understand anything outside of your primary language. I found that some of the strongest programmers were ones that simply knew you know, a low-level language, probably a C-style language, and then they also knew a high-level language. They knew Java, or they knew C#, or they knew Python. And somebody who had one of each at least, even if that second one was like PHP or Perl, which has a really interesting set of mannerisms to it, even if you had just those, it kind of ended up working out. Because what would end up happening is I'd talk about Python and they'd be able to relate the high-level concepts across. And it just kind of made sense. They didn't have to sit there and ask about, wait, but what does it do here? And, oh, wait, how does this work again? There was none of that. It was very simple for them to kind of work through the whole thing. So you'll notice we've got some similarities already. In fact, let's see, we're at Combat UI. Interesting. Okay, I don't want a Combat UI in this space. I actually want the character window, right? Or I'm trying to think of the object, which is, let's see, it's the object whose transform contains the spell picker. So that's actually this background here. So it's kind of the spell target parent. And then we'll want, I'm trying to generalize as much of this as I can. Mostly because these are things that get filled in at runtime, and unfortunately, because they're filled in at runtime, it tends to mean that we have to do this a little more dynamically. So you'll note I'm doing everything I can to kind of remove all the hard-coded values in here, because if we can generalize this enough, this will kind of save us a lot of trouble. Granted, the combat target picker is a very specific piece. That's going to make it a little difficult for us. But we're pretty freaking close. You'll note the things that still stand out. We have a problem here. Let's see. Where else do we have any problems? We have a problem here. And that's honestly about it, I think. Let me look over this whole thing once more. Yeah, that's it. That really is it. Oh wait, we have a start function down here. Spell text and spell icon. That's actually not that bad. That's actually easy. So Unreal and Unity, Mental has made a comment here. He tried to look at and learn a bit of Unreal, mostly because it's a 3D shader side stuff, or it has powerful 3D and shader side stuff. And as a longtime Unity dev, it was the most terrifying experience ever. That's how it goes when you switch engines. You get so used to the mannerisms and the feel of one engine that it's difficult to then switch engines, and it's a really good thing for you as a programmer to be able to actually do that. I spent a lot of time previous to this working on a C++ engine that was very object-oriented, very model view controller style, where controllers were literally attached to parts of the model, or part of the model. They would modify the data model, and then the renderer would sit on top of the whole thing and render out the view that it had. And that was perfect architecturing of a model view control system with object-oriented setups everywhere. Everything was object-oriented. And then what happens is you end up with this switch when you jump to Unity. So unmanaged language to managed language. Okay, that's not so bad, especially as a programmer who bounces between those two a lot. For me, it wasn't a huge issue. The issue was Unity likes a decorator pattern versus the C4 engine wanted a model view controller. And those two clash pretty heavily. So when I switched engines, suddenly you find you can't object orient things as much as you want to. You find yourself doing more data binding and more loose data binding when possible to keep things from clashing head on. Otherwise, you kind of have this issue with things that just they collide and it's no good. It really was a pain in the butt. Alright, so issue number one is the fact that we have this submit button. Granted, we're going to need a submit button on both ends, so that might not actually be an issue. So the big thing that's really left is the fact that we have a combat target picker on one end. And we don't really have anything similar on our other end here. When I say, let's see. Let's get rid of what we can to see what we can handle here, but yeah, the target page is empty. B, the target page needs to, I'm just actually going to move this under the, hello, I would like to move this up a level. That's interesting. Okay, yes, I know I'm going to break things for a moment. Don't mind me, just breaking things. That's what I do. Inventory page, spell page. This should go here. Good. That's where I wanted it. Let's actually deactivate that, just so I don't accidentally click on it or do anything silly. So you've got a spell page with spells in it. The spells need to be very similarly modeled. So we end up with a prefab of a spell UI that has a, where is it? That has a spell UI script attached to it. So at about the same time we open the inventory, we also have to fill this thing with spells, just to make sure that if they click on it, we care about all the contents that are going to show up in it. And I kind of even want to go so far as to remove the spell tab if they don't have any spells, just to make sure that like when you click on it, it's empty. You're like, wait, why doesn't this work? It helps that I've been doing a lot of playtesting with really young kids, and they click on freaking everything. And it's kind of teaching me that if I can take stuff away from the player when it's not necessary, it simplifies the experience. There's less to get confused about. And so I want to make sure that I pull everything out that might cause any kind of confusion, because I'm going to assume at this point that my player is something akin to a monkey at a keyboard, so that if things start to go wrong, I can't say, oh, you played the game wrong. I'd say, oh, well, you must not understand something, so let me fix it. Let me fix the user experience token that is causing this to break for you. So we have the each time we open our inventory, okay, I'm going to find a game object. Actually, I'm just going to use transforms until I need game objects. So we have the inventory base. We also need the spell base, or page, I should say. You should not say base. You should actually say page as well. And do I need this to be a game object? That's my big question. Or should this be a transform? Oops, this one. No, this needs to be a transform. Note how when I remove that or change that to a transform, I just switch that there. So this is a pretty simple modification. And it actually cleans up the code to change the argument type. I always want to keep that stuff in mind when I'm writing out my arguments. Does this argument make sense? Can I simplify this argument any further? So we have create item UI. I'm actually going to go so far as to say create spell UI as well. We'll have our spell page here, the spell itself there, and I'm just going to follow the format of the one above, but I'm not actually going to fill it in quite yet. This wants to be a transform, which means no game object hunting. Transform.findChild background/spell page. Once we've got the spell page, I'm trying to think of an easy way to handle the create spell UI, but it looks pretty straightforward. So we have each spell in, we have a spell list here, right? I'm tempted to say for each domain, dump them into their own domain lists. Just once again, I'm talking about purely, let's do one thing at a time here. For each spell in the spell list, we're going to create a spell UI. I don't actually need to put this into a function, but I want to, just because it matches the code up above. So here's our spell page, here's the spell, and we don't actually need that string. No parent name string is necessary for create spell UI. Cool. We do need the template though. You'll note we don't have any template for the spell UI. Spell item, spell, it's spell UI. Spell UI template. I can't help but note that my templates don't have the word template on the end. That tends to make reading the code a lot easier. Whatever. Not the end of the world, just little text changes that when I come back to it later will make my life a lot easier. Mental says he found the blueprint system kind of nice for the background elements. Let's say tree code, and it saves more time. What really confused me is how complicated their component system was. Yeah. Well, I mean, Unreal is one of those go big or go home kind of groups. They don't tend to underdo anything by any, state of mind. It's really every single time they do something, they kind of go overboard because they'd rather have more features than not enough. Versus Unity is kind of happy to provide enough to get you working, and then kind of assume that if you want to do something yourself, they've provided tools to modify their editor. And they kind of say, yeah, just do what you want. We don't really care so much. So they give you the tools to work with extra and create extra yourself, but they're not going to do it for you, versus Unreal is, I think, kind of happy to do stuff for you. They say, oh, you want this in here? Let's add this to the class. And it actually kind of reminds me of Unity 4.x. Where things just kind of had extra variables floating around that you may or may not actually need or use. Mental is also asking what he doesn't understand is how the shading and graphic work in Unreal is so far ahead of Unity. Is it because of C#? Part of it's C#, part of it is just how Unity wants to handle things. They like to do this physically based shading stuff, and I'm not sure that's really the best way to go. It takes a professional level artist to create professional looking art in Unity, versus in Unreal they've worked it in such a way that even an amateur can create stuff that looks decent inside Unity. So it's an interesting back and forth there. Part of it is the C# language, which Unity gets a lot from, right? You think about the fact that they get all these neat lists and .NET utilities, versus Unreal has to use like C++ versions of them, but the C++ is still managed. So it's not like they gain a ton out of it. They gain some stuff, don't get me wrong, but they don't gain a ton by using the C++. And so I honestly haven't dug a ton into Unreal. I looked at it, I did some work with it, but it was very minor stuff. Maybe my next game jam I'll go so far as to dig into it, kind of see what they're doing. But yeah, one of those things. Okay. So we've got our game object, new spell UI. One of these days I'll figure out how to put chat like somewhere in my window. The problem is I already feel like the text is small enough as is without me adding more things to the screen and taking away more space from what you guys can see in terms of text. Granted, I could compress this down and not use this as much, but I do like to actually have this here and look through it from time to time. So I'm not actually certain I want to throw that out quite yet. I'll have to think about that. So we have to grab the spell UI script off of the new spell UI that we just created. We toss the spell in, and also I'm pretty sure tossing the owner in is also part of this. So spell UI script dot character dot owner. No. Spell UI. What do you have? It just has a target. Okay. Spell target parent. Interesting. I'll have to think about this. I think this probably needs to also have attached the caster, just so that when all is said and done I can jump back and say, okay, I know who the caster is, I know what's going on here, and I can kind of take care of the whole thing from end to end. Especially since the thing that's bothering me the most is when I click on this spell and I click on the person to cast and then I hit the cast button, I'm not really sure where I should show the text, right? I need text somewhere in this environment that says, oh, by the way, you need to, you know, so-and-so casts this spell, and when they cast the spell, here's the final effect. So if I have to blow somebody up or cast something on an item, I kind of want to make sure that that ends up in the right place, and I can't help but notice that I really don't have anything of that sort floating around. So that's another kind of worry right now, at least off the top of my head. I'm just trying to think of things that I might need to handle, and that's on the list. Let's get this spell UI out of here. There we go. Mental, you're attending a game jam? Sweet. Game jams are awesome, especially if you go in with other people. Then really, that's the big thing is, I say if you're going to go to a game jam, go with other people who are just as interested in it as you. Because having more people helps you kind of get a larger project taken care of. Doing something on your own is incredibly difficult, and may not be the most reasonable thing to expect of yourself, at least since this is your first one. The only real prep I would know how to do is just refamiliarize yourself with the engine you want to work with. Take care of making sure that you know, okay, if I want to do this in Unity, if I want to do that in Unity, maybe have some code prepped and ready, because a lot of input stuff tends to be the same. A lot of UI stuff tends to be the same. And so code that you think you might be able to reuse, just kind of keep it in hand. I wouldn't say go so far as to, write a ton of code, because during a game jam you might want something very specific. But it's definitely interesting and helpful in my experience to have a certain amount of code just kind of ready in case. It helps you not only feel a little more prepared, but also when you've got the code ready like that, you can then a little more easily do certain things. You say, oh, okay, I want to do this with a first-person controller. Well, I've got this code over here that does a first-person controller plus other things, so let me toss that into place and then rip things out of it until it does what I want it to do. So it's just kind of nice to have some of that stuff floating around. I also can't help but notice that my tabs don't have any images on them, and I did have some images actually slated for use here. So let me nab those. Specifically, crap. There's a lot of them here, and yeah, I did write them here. Okay. 3-83 was my 3-8. There's my person that I wanted, or I should say my person icon. Yeah, I'm just gonna dump these in for now. I had 2-54 or 2-67. 2-54. I kind of like that one. Or 2-5. What? 2-67. Sorry. Or 2-6. I like that one a lot more. Okay, 2-6-7. Sweet. And then for spells, I said 3-03. I think that was a joke, having this as my spell icon. What's my other one? 3-52. 3-5-2 was this one. Okay, yeah, sure. I like it. Seems decent. Let's see here. You and you and you. First off, you're all sprites, by the way. We don't need mip maps because they're always going to be the same size. Be lots of Microsoft and Unity mentors developing games there. Sweet. Where is this? That sounds awesome. I definitely like the idea of going to a place that has like a Unity mentor or a Unity or a Microsoft guy there to help with, like, I don't know. I want to say HoloLens stuff because obviously that's kind of a neat tech that would be cool to play with, but I don't think that's actually going to be the case of what they'd allow you to play with. Because I don't think the HoloLens stuff is actually out yet in terms of being something you can, like, play with. Sprite is going to be, here's our stats, and let's just, I'm going to anchor this in an interesting way. What you do when you set anchors, instead of setting pixel sizes, is you essentially tell it, I want this image to fit this space very specifically. And so you'll note now suddenly we just have that single, actually, can my stats tab just be made up of that image? It can. Oh, well, I don't need an image underneath it then. That's cool. That works. Inventory tab. Let's switch you out with, here's our inventory, and our spell tab will get switched out with spells. Great. Also, let's hide that spell tab if you don't have any spells. I just want to get that like out of the way right now. Inside the player character, I did say caster should get set. And then here's our spell UI. And we're going to say the spell page. I see what's going on here. So the find child is actually crud. I need to look at the hierarchy for this. We go spell page, scroll view, content. Is that how it looks? No. Viewport, content. And viewport is one word, content is one word. Good. And it actually says it should go background. Right? I go, nope, background's not a part of that. Never mind. Never mind. Don't mind me. Okay. So I have the spell, and I have the spellcaster, and then I let them pick the target, and once they pick the target, then I should be able to cast the spell. The downside being that right now I have 0 UI to take care of this. No way whatsoever. Which is really unfortunate because I'd like to have that, obviously. Okay, so this is how I want it normally to pop up. So if I get rid of this, and I say, let's click on this guy. Oh, unassigned references. What? Info UI template is not in the party, huh? So each of these portrait backgrounds. No, not the portrait background. It's the portrait itself. The portrait itself calls through to the party member. Each of the party members doesn't have an info UI template. That's what I get for changing the name of things. I need to remember that Unity does not use, Unity does use names to demarcate things. And so there we go. And my spell UI template should go there. Great. Now I click, there we go, much better. Is there like a hover and a selected that's going on inside this? That's kind of my last curiosity real quick. I just want to check this, make sure. So, okay, highlighted and pressed, and then it stays highlighted afterwards. Interesting. Sprite swap, animation, I don't actually care about most of these, so yeah, no, that's the way it's gonna be. That's fine. That's fine. So, for example, now, if I click on the cleric and hit the spell page, there's a tiny little box. Crap. Okay. The cleric should have a pair of spells, and I'm kind of curious what's going on here. It looks like something started to work, and then it just kind of bugged out on me. The spell page has the viewport with the content, and the pair of spells, each of which has the caster and the spell correctly set. The spell target parent didn't get set though. That's fine. I can help with that at least. Spell UI script dot spell target parent is going to be the spell page, I think. Let me double check. But if I open up the background, the spell page, the spell page contains, yeah, it contains the target page, but it doesn't also contain the spell page. Didn't I could have sworn I moved the target page out to, I did, okay, just making sure. So that is going to be the background. So not the spell page, but the spell page's parent. And the spell page is, oh, the spell page is a transform, so that isn't actually necessary. Okay, well, that's another step in the right direction. But why are these things not the right side? Ooh, there'll be VR demos. Shiny. Ooh, and they'll be showing off Unity 5.3. That's really freaking cool. I did not know I had so many Lithuanian developers watching my stream. That's actually really freaking cool. YouTube and Twitch tend to tell me that everybody is practically based in the US or the UK, but I guess apparently 8 in the morning in the US is great for Lithuanian developers. I don't know if that's actually the case, or if I've just got you guys all up at like 2 in the morning. I know I had a German developer in here at one point, and for him it was something like 2 in the morning. Majami's saying he ran into this before. It's navigation, just set it to none and it'll be okay. It'll disappear when you click it. Okay. I kind of like the hover sticking around, honestly. So, okay, I click on somebody. I click on you. Why is this wrong? Right? What is going on here with this character that's causing it to not quite be right? In the Netherlands, it's 5:47 p.m. Nice. Okay, well, hey, if this works, this works. I'm happy to have all you guys along, so it's definitely awesome to have so many people sitting in chat right now. And it's definitely a different group than what I'm used to. I'll give you guys that. You guys are amazingly helpful. Let's see here. Scroll view. Okay, so the scroll view has inside of its content the 2 spells. The spells aren't actually our problem. I can't help but notice that the right side is getting set, and that's kind of a frightening-ish thing. If I make the whole thing longer, it does kind of fit, but it also seems to still be having some trouble. And I don't know if that's because the spell UI has... No, the spell UI doesn't have this attached to it. I wonder if when I set parent, I need to also be setting like the right and left hand side of this rectangle. That would be probably the case. If we look up the combat spell UI, no. If I look up, what is it? Is it the combat UI? When I click choose spell. There we go. Here's the choose spell action. Let's just grab this chunk and dump it in. Not the spell UI, obviously, but when I say create UI, there we go. I don't think I need the word new here. I kind of understand what's going on. I've already set the parent, as far as I can tell. Create spell UI, yeah. Just for the sake of it, let's put the UI parent here, just so I can grab it pretty easily and make use of that there. Also, the spell index. And finally, oh, okay, here's where we're doing the actual find parent. So I don't want that. We actually want this to put there. That should do the trick. I think that should do the trick. I say that, I'm not 100% sure. Let's get rid of that first and see if it helps. And then we'll kind of push forwards and see if this does the trick. Compiler errors have to be fixed. Oh, right. Because I said that I wanted a third argument in here that is my spell. We have to switch this to a for I loop. Not difficult, just has to happen. Spell list I, done. There we go. So now, let's see if our cleric actually has a decent set of spells. Hey, there we go. There's our heal wounds, there's our firebolt. Now you'll note clicking on them causes reference issues. We can clean that up. That's next, that's more features. Yeah. Okay, so when you click on one of these, so on pointer click, we go through, we grab all the other spell UIs, we grab the component that has the image, we turn them off, we turn ours on. If there's a submit button, we turn that on as well. So something I should do actually is hide that normally. So character window. You guys will note I keep putting this thing in place and then deleting it again, mostly because I want to make sure that A, I don't leave it in the scene when I'm testing, and B, I don't want to have it sitting around for when I save things, because then I'll accidentally leave it in there, and that would not be good. Okay, so here's the spells. I click on Firebolt. Now we've still got some null reference exceptions to clean up. That's not the worst thing ever. So we should grab the spell picker. Oh, I don't have names on any of this. That's part of the issue. Okay. Alright, I didn't realize that I hadn't set this. So I need the spell picker name, which is going to get set to, what is that going to get set to? I think it's just like picker page or target page. I'm going to put that in for now. Nope, that's the target parent. Oh, wait, no. Okay, the spell picker page and the target picker name. So I know that's the target picker name. spell picker name. That's going to be the spell page. There we go. So now I should be able to click and have it hide things based on what spell. So I grab heal wounds. You'll notice the spell page hides. I don't know if it actually correctly brought up the target page. No, it didn't. Okay, that's fine. The spell page, let's see. Trying to find one of my spells to see if I can't figure out what's going on. So we have the background, and it's called target page. I wonder what line it's erroring out on. It says it's having trouble on line 33. So, oh, it's trying to get the combat target picker, which is going to cause trouble because the combat target picker is not actually attached to this at all. So it returns null, and then we proceed to try and do operations on it. And I left my little note here even for myself to say there's an error here. Whoops. Alright guys, it's coming up on 9 a.m. for me. I do have to go to work, unfortunately. Thank you, though, so much for joining me today. If you're here for the first time, I encourage you, please hit the follow button below. I love to have all your support, and I'm definitely keeping myself motivated and charging through on this project. I'll see if maybe I can blast through some of this boring, not so great UI stuff tonight, but we'll definitely keep moving. Things that are coming up soon, I want spells to start costing mana, and I've got some design ideas on how I want to do that. And then I also need to start in on NPC encounters. So I want you to actually run into my first NPC. I'm thinking is going to be something along the lines of like a goblin trader that you can buy and sell goods with. You know, sort of a Resident Evil, what are you buying kind of guy. Yeah, that's kind of what I've got coming up. I'll keep you guys informed. Thanks again, guys, for joining me, and I will see you hopefully next time as I do this 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Tuesday through Friday. So we got, I want to say Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We got 3 more days in the week of early morning streams. So hopefully I'll catch you guys then. Take care. Bye.